Today, I'm going to dive into a common myth that we are all led to believe: multitasking. What if I told you that your brain can't actually multitask, like at all? Stick around to find out why our brain is actually switching between tasks and how this could be affecting your productivity. With that being said, we're going to go into this live stream talking about what is the myth of multitasking and what is our brain actually doing. But before we dive in, I'm just going to take a sip of this carbonated water that I have over here. All right. And also, I'm just going to point out, if I'm looking to the side, it is because I do have my notes over here. And another thing is, one of the reasons I'm bringing up this topic is because I think over 2 years ago, I made a video on when you can't focus on multiple things at once, do this. And it was like in a short version. So what I'm going to do now, and after learning about multitasking and task switching in class, I'm like, I need to come back to this topic because I have more understanding, more knowledge that I feel like everyone should know because it's quite important. So multitasking, like I said, it's a myth. And what exactly is multitasking is the belief of that the brain could be focused on multiple things and doing multiple things at once. And multiple things just simply means two or more items that the brain is focusing at once. And the reason why I say this is a myth is just based on science. There has been science identifying that the reason why people believe they are multitasking is because their brains have developed a quick way to switch between different tasks. So really, when someone says, oh, I'm really great at multitasking, what they really are saying is that, oh, I'm really great at switching between different tasks. The thing with task switching is that it could decrease your productivity. Now, if the tasks are similar, it may not be as a drastic decreased. Because what I've learned through my psychology classes, especially learning about memory and the concept of learning for humans, is that when it comes to switching between tasks, it depends on the level of difficulty or complexity that a task is, will define how productive, in another way successful, a person can be switching between those two tasks. So in this scenario, I'm going to be referring to when an individual is switching between one and another task. So there's only two tasks involved. Let's say the first task is simple, and then the individual is going to be switching between the simple task, the first one, and then another simple task as the second one. This is ideally the most successful task switching that you could do to have the highest productivity results. But say your first task is simple, and then you have another task that is a little bit more complex. Now, it doesn't have to be like the first, it could also be the first one's complex and the second one is simple. This will just decrease your productivity by a little bit. I don't quite have the numbers on me. I'm doing this based off of memory of what I learned throughout my psychology classes. And so having one simple task and one complex task and switching between those is still manageable. It's just not ideal. Now, let's say you have two complex tasks. In studies, they call this quote unquote impossible to have success through productivity when you're switching between two complex tasks. Now, is it necessarily impossible? No, it just means it's more difficult because your brain is going from one complex thing to another in a time span of like 5 seconds, or that's what you're attempting to do. Because task switching, in the way we're referring to, is like, okay, you're going from one task straight to another, and then you're bouncing back and forth. And this is similar to, I guess an example I'll use is when you're driving, so that's one task. And especially if you're a new driver, it could be quite a complex task because it's a new task. And then it's the reason why they don't, there's a law saying you shouldn't be on your phone while driving. You should be texting and driving. You shouldn't be having a phone call. And even if it's like, oh, but my car's Bluetooth, like it connects to it, even that could be distracting because while driving and having a phone call, you're not doing both at the same time. You're switching between tasks. Now, a phone call could seem like a simple task, but if you're sitting down, it's just, oh, you're just making a phone call. But even when you're making a phone call and walking, you're switching between focusing on your phone call and walking. But since ideally you have been walking for longer than you've been making phone calls typically, your brain thinks of walking as a simple task, and depending on the level of conversation, it could be quite simple, but even if it's quite complex, it doesn't disturb your walking. Now, with that being said, if you're having a phone call while driving, which I don't advise, driving could be a complex task, and depending on the phone call, it could be simple or it could be complex. And this is why people, when they have phone calls while driving, their driving skills, the level of how they're driving could be different than they're not on a phone while driving a vehicle, because they're not thinking between switching tasks. Now, with that being said, hold on, the train of thought left the train station. I think that means that we're just done with the car example, and let's see. So ways to have productivity when you are task switching is, say you have a list of tasks to do, whether it's around your house or maybe it's a list of work that you have to complete. What you could do is first jot down, I refer to this as brain dumping, on a piece of paper or on a notes or on a document on your computer or even on your phone, and just type or write down everything you need to get completed that you would like to in a certain desired time. And I suggest doing this before you actually have to go and do them, if you know ahead of time. And then I would go through and highlight or number each item on the list, starting with, okay, what needs to get done first, and putting like a star next to it. And then going through and circling what are tasks that feel quite simple or easy to me, or something that I know I could get done quickly and doesn't necessarily require as much brain power as some other tasks. Like, for example, if you have a fill in the blank homework assignment, or you have a one question assignment versus, oh, I have to create a whole essay, I have to do the outline, I have to edit it, I have to make sure I connect it to my thesis, and going back and forth, I have to do research for it, and then before I submit it, I need to double check it one more time and all that jazz. The essay is a complicated task compared to a one question assignment or a fill in the blank assignment, or something that just feels easy. And the reason why I want you to identify those two things is because we're going to start with the priority assignments, and we're going to use the Pomodoro technique, of where you work for around 20 minutes to 25 minutes on one assignment, then you have a break, and then you continue working for 20 to 25 minutes. The way I use this technique is that I start with what needs to get done first, and then I have a break, and the second round of focus, I don't go back to that first assignment. Rather, I don't go back to that first assignment even if it's not completed. What I do is I go to a simple task to complete that, because in my mind, I know I have to complete the difficult task or the more complex task, but I'm still thinking about everything else I have to do. So in order to ease my mind, I switch between a complex task to a simple task. So then I'm continuously working on that complex assignment, but at the same time, I'm working through my assignment list of all the things I have to get done for school or for work or just around my place. Now, this is task switching in like a longer form, because for example, I'm working on 25 minutes on one assignment, taking a break, and then 25 minutes on another, and repeating the cycle and going through my assignment list to complete it. That is not quite an extreme level of task switching, but that's how I view it. And the reason why you want to go, if you're going to switch between assignments, I suggest, based on what the research shows between task switching, you start with a priority assignment or a more complex assignment, and then you give that 5 minutes break, but then also allowing yourself to give your mind a break while working on something else, a more simple task, and then continuing on throughout your list. And we don't want to start with like a complex task, stop and move on to another complex task, because it would just be so much for your brain and it would feel overloading, and you would think, oh, but we're getting more assignments done. Not necessarily, because the productivity is not the same as, oh, complex assignment and then switching to a simple task. Or even what you could do with the Pomodoro method, which is more how people use it, is how you focus on something, you focus on a task or assignment, take a break, and continue focusing with that task or assignment until you complete it. All right. So that's a little tip I have about task switching and how you could increase your productivity, or how to be aware of your productivity while studying or finishing up assignments for classes. All right, that is all I have for y'all today. But before you click off of this video, remember that true productivity comes from focus and attention, not just juggling between multiple tasks. Challenge yourself to limit distractions and see how much more you could get done. What's the one task you'll focus on today? Let me know in the comments, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye, y'all.